So it's another day in the shop working on a reclaimed modern table. And you know what that means. Time to glue the stick and slide the brick. Bonk. Alright, let's get to work. So it's a big day in the shop. I got this white oak that I reclaimed from a local home renovation. This will become the legs and apron and under support of the table. So I start out on the miter saw by trimming the boards down to about a 5-degree angle for the tops and bottom of the legs. So I had this template left over from another build, and it turns out it's exactly the angle I wanted for these legs, so I just traced it on and got to cutting. My bandsaw is mid-restoration, and my table saw tapering jig is woefully inadequate for this job. But honestly, I can get this job done with the jigsaw with a good blade and good speed control. So long as I stay proud of my line, there's just minimal cleanup to do, and it goes fast with the power planer and my jack plane. You might have noticed I don't have any dog hole or clamping system for this type of work, and that's why I prefer a workbench top that you don't really care too much about, so I can just screw a clamping block right into it and get going. And now for the fun part, table saw tenons. I know what you're thinking. You're looking at me, I'm not using a stop block, and you're thinking, what, were you born wrong? Give me a break. Well, listen up, Buttercup. I'm only cutting in this piece of wood about 1/4 of an inch at most. There's not enough surface area between the blade and the fence for it to catch and throw it back at me. So why don't you just ease up and watch the video. At some point this wood was held together with dowels, whether it was part of a table or a shiplap system, I don't really know. So I had some holes to fill along the way just to make sure that my joints were as strong as they could be. Fun fact, this is called a gent saw. That's really all I've got. Cutting the material for the horizontal span of the apron is a nice, simple 90-degree cut across the board and then a rip to the proper width. Cutting the joinery for this section is pretty much the same as before. The tenons are cut on the table saw one pass at a time, nice and clean. And I clean them up later with a chisel off camera if I have any bumps or grooves. So, SamPro Tools was cool enough to send me one of their template tools to try out. And it came in real handy for transferring the shape and position of the tenons on the apron to where I'd be cutting the mortises for them on the legs. I'll make sure to put a link in the description for where you can pick one up if you're interested. Now I made sure I measured and marked and remeasured and remarked over and over again because I did not want to screw this up. You can see here where I had an original mark that was wrong and I had to correct it. This is because this is not a job that I can screw up with the limited materials I have for this build. I think I pretty much used just about every layout tool I have in the shop just to make absolutely sure that this joinery was going to go where it needed to be. And once it was all laid out, it was router time. It wasn't too difficult to freehand the mortises right up to the line and then finish it off with a chisel. I used 2 passes to get to my final depth. I used the tenon to check the base length and width of the mortise and then start squaring up the corners with the chisel. Keep going back and checking the fit as I progress over and over until I've got it exactly right, nice and snug. For as fast and efficient as modern machine tools can be, I really enjoy supplementing the work with old hand tools because it gives me a chance to slow down and really concentrate on what I'm doing and getting it right. Too often when using just power tools, I tunnel vision for the finish line and end up screwing something up in the process. And like I said, this build had limited materials. I was not going to find any more white oak old enough to match this, anywhere in a given time frame if I messed it up. And you know what else? Wood's friggin' expensive, man. So you creep, and you crawl, and you poke, and you prod, and you sneak up on that final dimension, and in the end, it's perfect. And when it's perfect, and only when it's perfect, that's when you finally add the glue. And for all you nerds that are wondering, but are too ashamed to even ask yourself out loud in your own dark, lonely room, it's Type On 2. So that was the process for the front and back leg assemblies, and let's move on to securing the rest of the apron together. Let me just get a little clampy clamp on this and get it out of the way. Okay, so full disclosure, in the midst of this crazy build, I lost a bunch of footage. But luckily I'm here to tell you what I did. I templated the angle from the legs onto the side apron pieces and cut that, drilled 2 holes, slightly splayed out from each other, into the ends of the boards and the side of the legs. The reason for me splaying the dowels out of the end of the apron piece at an angle is that when you squeeze them together slightly and insert them into the straight holes on the back of the legs, the force that the dowels exert on those holes actually squeezes the boards together more tightly, making for a stronger joint in the long run. I hope that made sense. And I'm using this framing square instead of the speed square to check the inside of the apron because it spans a longer distance and will give me a more accurate read. Here's video evidence that I need a new 1/4" drill bit. You're not supposed to be pushing that hard, you dummy. So because I have a tendency to overbuild these things, I ran a couple of through dowels from the back of the legs into the side piece of the apron, adding to the stability and in effect pinning the tenon from the horizontal piece of the apron in place permanently. Also, when it's finished, it'll be a nice little aesthetic touch. In previous videos in this series, you'll remember that I destroyed an old antique cabinet to make this totally nice table and that it was totally worth it and I didn't do anything wrong. Well, these pine pieces came out of the same cabinet and I'm going to use them to make corner braces for the inside frame underneath the table. Just got to cut them all with inside facing 45-degree angles and take it to the table saw. Cutting the grooves off the ends of these pieces not only makes them look a little cleaner, it also makes them slightly more narrow than the table apron itself so that they won't show in the final product. Here I'm just going to use screws despite the fact that I've already used mortise and tenon joinery in the main part of the apron build. This will just be a whole lot quicker, a whole lot cleaner, and a whole lot less of a pain in my ass than trying to figure out some sort of angled dowels or mortise and tenon or I don't know, magical half-blind unicorn fairy tale dovetail nonsense to get these things joined up. So I start by drilling through with an angle with the smaller drill bit, finish off by countersinking the hole with a larger drill bit, and it's time to get these things attached. So you can't see it, but I added glue to this joint because I felt guilty using screws and I thought that maybe at least adding glue would make me a real woodworker again. And after getting the final corner bracket in place, the construction phase on the leg assembly and apron is complete. So if you haven't caught the first couple of videos in this series, I urge you to go back and check them out. They show how I got to this point and a little bit of a discussion of where I'm going from here. If you want to see more of what I'm doing, go ahead and try to find that subscribe button. I haven't found it yet personally. It seems like they hit it really well. It's really, really difficult to find. Like, I don't think you're smart enough. I think you're a smart person and you're very capable, but I don't think you're smart enough to find and let alone click that subscribe button. It's well camouflaged. They do such a good job with that.